Stand by for broadcast.
You're listening to InsideAIR, a behind-the-wire view of the Royal Air Force, its people, technology and operations.
Hi, this is Flight Lieutenant Chris Solly, and welcome to the latest episode of InsideAIR, where this time we're going behind the scenes for an update on flying training.
It is a genuine training emulator, so that the jet I'm going to fight against is a Sukhoi 27, and I am genuinely fighting a Sukhoi 27 that's firing missiles at me whilst I'm flying my Hawk. We want people to be in stretch, so they're going to be challenged, and we're going to support them through that challenge. So if you go vertical, I'll kill you. If you go rate, I'll kill you. If you go radius, I'll kill you. If you go into a rolling scissors, I'll kill you. If you go into a flat scissors, I'll kill you. If you try and run, I'll kill you. I've never lost to a student pilot.
We'll have an update on some of the RAF stories you may have missed out on, and we'll be checking out who's under the hat with AS1 Ben Russell.
Best location you've served?
Bosnia, up in the mountains doing rotors turn and refuels on every type of helicopter from across NATO.
As head of flying training for the Royal Navy, Army and the RAF, Air Commodore Rob Caine's job is to get as many aircrew as possible through flying training and to the front line. He told Squadron leader Peter Lisney of InsideAIR how the system has been changing and how augmented reality and psychological skills training are now both playing a part in producing the UK's next frontline pilots.
Air Commodore Rob Caine, head of flying training. Why you're at Abbey Wood and not on a flying station, I don't know. We'll get to that, but welcome to InsideAIR.
Good morning, and thanks very much for talking to me, Peter.
Yeah, let's start with that. Why are you at Abbey Wood and not somewhere with a runway?
It's a great question. I think it's because we've got a central headquarters part of UK MFTS, and we have to work really closely with industry and with our defence equipment and support partners who are part of how we deliver the flying training system. So that is a real central hub so that we can work with those partners really closely. And then when we want to, we can go all over the country pretty easily from Bristol to Cranwell, which I'm going to do later on today, or Valley, or down to Culdrose. So it's actually not too bad a midpoint.
Okay, it's just a shame no one can pick you up in a Hawk, that's all, I guess.
I fully agree.
So UK MFTS, that's a whole bunch of initializations. What does that mean?
It is the UK military flying training system, and it came in about 2008. And I think everybody knows it's had a bit of a roller coaster of a history, some really good stuff and some really difficult birthing, as it were. But I think now we're working in a really different way, and I think we're starting to deliver some really fantastic results. And I'm here to hopefully expand on that and give you some insights to what the students and the instructors are delivering right the way across the system now.
Okay, that sounds really good, really promising. But we've heard about UK MFTS in the past. We've read about it in the newspapers. So I'm hoping that we're going to get to the truth today.
Yeah, and I'll be really open, and I'll tell you about where we've still got challenges and where we need to get things better. The students and the instructors who work inside the system every day know those bits, but I was sitting at the Royal International Air Tattoo and talking with different members of industry and our partners, and some of them probably have a perception of the training system and all the publicity on it from about 5 years ago. And I know that you've done some great work trying to expand on what we've done from 21. So this is just a really nice period of time to refresh that and give people a new perspective. And I've only been in for 2 months. I'm really lucky. I took over from a really good friend of mine called Ian Sharrocks, and he's called Roxy in the Air Force. Roxy and the members of DNS and Ascent, I think, have been working so much closer together than they have probably in the past. And I think they've delivered real change in the system. So I'm really giving him a lot of plaudits rather than mine.
Okay, great. Well, it's a team, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, right. I'm going to ask you, this is your first curveball.
Yeah.
Think about your own flying training. You're a GR1 guy.
GR1 and 4, yeah. Not that old.
Okay. You might need to think about this, but when in your operational flying career, have you had the hairiest moment, that nearly all went completely wrong moment, when on reflection you thought it was my training that saved my life that day?
Oh, loads of them. Loads of them. So I was very lucky to fly in Germany on the Tornado. And I remember taking off with my navigator, a guy. Well, I won't tell you his real name, but his nickname was Big Vern, and he actually gave me my nickname, which we won't go into later. We might do, but we were flying around the south of Dusseldorf, and we had a mechanical failure on one of the engines. So essentially, it shut itself down, and or broke itself, and we had to shut it down. And then as we turned the corner to come home, I lost the flap control of the aircraft as well. So now I had to land this 25-ton jet at quite high speeds. And I remember Big Vern saying to me, right, your single engine flapless landing speed is, now normally we'd land at about 160 miles an hour, something like that. And he said we're going to land at about 240 miles an hour. And I remember going, I remember being, I might have used a swear word at the time, but as we came in to prepare for that single engine flapless landing at Bruggen Airfield, I wasn't panicked by it. Actually, the hardest thing was not the landing, which I'd practiced loads and loads of times in simulators and in training. It was actually stopping the aircraft by the end of the runway. I think we had a foot of runway left by the time we got out of that jet, which was pretty hairy. But actually, it was because of all that preparation and training and ability to handle pressure when it really matters that we give people through training, and we help develop resilience and that capability to manage the unexpected.
Your experience there, you talked about the training kicked in, and I was at a training event over the weekend, and the key words of this training event were stretch, not stress. And I guess that's what world quality training allows you to do. You might be in a stretch situation, but you should be able to cope with the stress of that situation.
Oh yeah, there's quite well-known sort of bubbles of comfort. So most people like to be in their comfort zone. We're all habitual animals, and we like to stick in there because it's safe. It's really nice. But you're not really going to expand or become better by doing that. So getting into the stretch zone, which is the zone after that, is where you're really going to develop. But if you go beyond it and you go into the fear zone, you end up in a position where you're not probably going to learn. You're going to drop off the performance curve, and you're going to start having real problems. So we have to balance pushing people to the edge of their stretch. And I actually think the training that we give nowadays compared to what I received is literally worlds apart. And I thought we were trained really, really well when I went through training. Of course, we were trained really, really well. The Air Force is famous for it. But I think what we do now is we're better teachers, we're better mentors, and we're better coaches. And one of the things I really love, and we're developing more and more about, is understanding psychology better. So that when our instructors go through, thankfully now all our instructors on B1 will now, as in their instructor upgrade, will go through an enhanced instructional techniques course with the Central Flying School, with an amazing guy called Dr. John Alsop, who's our psychological lead for all of RAF training. He's an absolutely amazing expert in his field, and we help instructors understand that psychology better. We're just about to roll out more psychological skills training for our students when they start coming through, so they understand how their mind works a little bit better. If you're familiar with it, Professor Stephen Peters' The Amazing Chimp Paradox, all of that kind of stuff, and I use that every day in my job, and it helps me, so I'm sure it helps all of our cadre of students and our instructors.
Yeah, certainly the way that the Air Force, I've seen the Air Force change in my career, is that we will recruit the right people because we're very particular on who we bring into the Royal Air Force. But if they fail at training, it's our fault. It's the training system's fault if we don't get them over the line.
Oh, totally. My aim as the head of flying training is to get everybody through. Absolutely everybody through to where they want to go to, so they can stay in the service, really, really enjoy their careers and give the most to it. And I genuinely feel that what we're trying to do is shift the whole bell curve so that people who are really good at the moment become excellent. People who are maybe struggling at different times become really, really good parts of the front line. So the whole bell curve of our performance shifts to the right. And by doing that, it's the right thing for our people. They will get more value from the training system as they go through it. Our instructors will enjoy the coaching and mentoring even more than they do already. And I think that's going to be a huge part of putting people onto the front line. So, as the chief says, we need to always be ready to fly and fight. Well, because I'm the head of training, I need to have a quality standard as well. So I'll go, we need to be fly, fight, and win. And so I want people to be able to go out and win. And therefore, I need to give them as many skills as possible. And if we were talking about business or something like tennis, I think Roger Federer is an amazing player. If he didn't have a coaching team support him, you might go, well, that's a bit strange. And in the tennis world, coaching is a part of success, not failure. And we are trying to change that view of you get coaching or mentoring when you're failing. And rather than we get coaching and mentoring all the time to make us better.
Yeah. Even on squadrons, we have someone that aircrew can speak to in a safe environment. They can download their experiences without fear of negative consequence.
Yeah, and we all need to be able to talk through times when we're having problems, because we are putting people at the edge of what the Australian RAND Corporation did a study on how to train F-35 pilots. And they said to make a fifth generation pilot, you need to have someone who can work at the edge of the human cognitive and physical performance boundary. And you're like, well, that sounds really cool. I went home to my wife and said, that sounds really cool. And she said, what does it mean? I went, I don't know. But what I think it means is you can do the job under high G-force and all the kind of different stresses and strains of being a helicopter on the front line, a helicopter pilot on the front line, or a battle space manager. But you need to be able to do the physical part of it. But also you need to have the mental performance to do things when it is difficult, either at night, in cloud, under pressure, getting shot at, wherever that might be. So that's what I want to help people get to, is that high performance.
Yeah, I mean, in this job, you can't complain when it's all going wrong. You have to deal with the situation and make a difference.
Yeah, totally. And we've got huge challenges because it's a really big and complex program. Of course, we're going to have things like engine problems or unserviceabilities. Of course, those challenges will be there. But we've got this amazing team that my predecessor, Roxy, helped cohere and bring together, that are able to deal with those challenges. So I really think we've turned a corner in what we're delivering.
So going back to your training experience, how has the instructor-student relationship changed, do you think, over the last 20, 30 years?
It's a great question. I think it's really developed. So I was an 11-year-old when I wanted to be a fighter pilot. So I was the keenest man in NATO. So when I went through 74 Squadron and I was doing 1v1 combat training for the first time, I was so excited. I worked so hard to understand what was going on. But when I was in the first neutral combat, the very first time where you're going to fight against your instructor, you might have a safety pilot in the boot, but you're going to fight against this instructor who's an experienced fighter pilot. I remember doing the safety brief, the domestics we call them, and then this pilot came in who's a very experienced frontline pilot with exchange background on F-16. And he was going to describe his teaching for me. And so I was sitting there keen as mustard to do my job. And it's, again, remember, it's the very first time I've done neutral air combat. And he said...
And this is, what, about 1999 maybe?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So we're both in Hawk T1s, and this instructor said to me, right, Rob, I'm a very experienced fighter pilot. If you go, and these are all fast jet terminology about how to fight air combat, so don't worry about the words because I was as confused as you will be. So if you go vertical, I'll kill you. If you go rate, I'll kill you. If you go radius, I'll kill you. If you go into a rolling scissors, I'll kill you. If you go into a flat scissors, I'll kill you. If you try and run, I'll kill you. I've never lost to a student pilot. And I remember sitting there going, well, I didn't understand most of what he just said. I'd read about it, but I didn't really understand it thoroughly. I was trying my best to understand it thoroughly. And we went airborne, and I'll tell you how it went. So I was really, really keen to win my first air combat merge against this instructor pilot. Almost fixated. I was like, I'm going to be the first person who's going to beat this instructor. Not how am I learning the most from this sortie. Literally fixated on that.
You
one
were getting
thing.
a bit of red mist there, weren't you?
I was probably getting a little bit of red mist. So we do this lovely thing. We set up. We're in battle about 2 miles from each other at around 15,000 feet. We do this thing back then, which was called an outwards turn for combat go. You then turn in, and now combat's on. You both call that you can see each other, tally, and then you're good to go. You're gonna fight your jet, and it's the first time you go from flying to fighting. It's so exciting. So we both hit the merge where we go past each other, and then you can maneuver. And we both decide to go into the vertical. So what we're going to do is pull straight up until you're pointing at the sky. And we're both doing that. So I'm looking at him, he's looking at me. And in my tiny brain, I'm thinking, if he drops out of that fight first, I'm going to get after him and shoot him. Right? It's very Top Gun. Now, you can do things like bunt to make the jet go up a little bit faster, so you get rid of the zero lift drag, all technical stuff. And I think I'm all over this. I'm doing really well. I'm just out climbing him. And he peels away, which is great. And I'm thinking, I'm going to win. I'm going to be the first person who's beaten him as a student pilot. And my instructor pilot says to me in the back, check airspeed. And I look in, and the minimum airspeed for air combat is 100 knots, I think, something like that. And I looked at my airspeed indicator, and it said 0 knots. Literally nothing on the dial. I was hanging there. And the instructor pilot in the back said, centralize and idle. So I put the throttle
in a calm voice,
throttle back to idle, centralized the controls, and just waited. And this jet just hung there and hung there. It felt like an age. And then it hammerheaded. It literally did like an air show maneuver, hammerheaded, and loads of smoke came out of the back. And obviously that's not a very good thing to do. And we managed to keep control of the aircraft. Amazing that the engine didn't surge. And obviously I had not won that fight. So in the debrief afterwards, I remember this instructor saying to me, well, Rob, what happened on that first merge? And I said, I got too fixated. My scan broke down, and I lost control of the airspeed and had to do a recovery. And he said, yeah, I looked up at you and I was laughing so much that I flew through the base height. And my safety pilot literally went, what do you mean you flew through the base height? Because we hadn't terminated the fight. We hadn't stopped fighting at that point. So technically, he'd flown himself into the simulated ground whilst I was making this terrible maneuver. So technically, I won that fight. So was that a great instructional experience for me as a student? Probably not. But now when we teach that at 4 Squadron and 25 Squadron, we literally teach step by step, one, what all of those things mean. And we've got great 3D graphics and all those kind of things with really experienced instructors taking people through what it all means before you even start the sortie. You might go in a flying training device and a full mission sim or a mixed reality flying training device to be able to understand the concepts in 3 dimensions before you go. Then you might go into the debriefing room like I did, and we will talk you through each element of a neutral fight, how it flows, how it doesn't, what to watch out for, what not to. You're not there to beat the student pilot. You're there to make them the best that they can be and to help them if they have problems, because it's a new environment. So then when you go flying, not only if we're in the fight, I can then instruct the student about how I'm winning or why they're losing. And so they can learn while they're doing it experientially. And then in the debrief, just like Top Gun, we've got this amazing air combat maneuvering interface, this amazing debriefing system where you can see in every dimension what's happening inside the cockpit and outside the cockpit about how you're winning and losing. So people become better pilots than we could have ever been. And when they go to the Typhoon, they are absolutely brilliant at what they do.
Completely coached through the process.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then also one thing we didn't realize was that they would do peer-to-peer learning, where they would use those debriefing tapes with their friends and colleagues, guided by instructors where necessary, to learn even more. We didn't expect them to do that.
Amazing. So back in July 2021, episode 17, Inside Air, was UK military flying training system. So for a listener, if they want to find out all the nuts and bolts of that process, that's the episode to listen to. And in fact, if they go back further, episode 15 was about helicopter pilot training. So we've covered off the the process. I remember at the time we were just coming out of a phase where there was a lot of negative press. And what we would like to know is what has changed at UK MFTS.
So I think if you look at the importance the Air Force has placed on it, we now have the Air and Space Commander who leads the APSG, the Air Pipeline Steering Group, where we look at all of the force commanders, all the demand from the front line, and we are then focused in on managing that in a much better way than we ever did. We've got much better data about where people are, what they're doing, aligning all the pipelines so we're getting the best out of the system. Because you could think of it like a car production facility where as soon as people join a careers information office until they become a commanding officer on the front line, that is a huge pipeline that delivers this warfighter to do their job, irrespective of where that is on the front line. So that is a whole series of connected events, and we need to make sure that's managed really well. And I think that is done now today because of that 3-star level focus for the chief, far better than it has ever been. And you go, okay, that just sounds like management speak, Rob, and it probably is. But I can look at the results. There are a few between courses because inevitably you need to have a little bit of space between each course, one to get some leave, but also to make sure those pipelines line up perfectly. One course finishes here, starts there. And there's about a third of people who are still holding, but the numbers in holding and the time people are holding is reducing. And I'm sure we'll have challenges with other things coming in to change that, but we will try and keep that trend of less people in holding and smaller holds, guided by that Air Pipeline Steering Group.
So the log jams are on their way out. It's going to be a shorter period of time from point of recruitment through to going on that frontline squadron.
Exactly that. And there are still people who are in the system, and I absolutely thank them for their patience for when they're coming to the end of their training, a number of different pipelines who have been through those long holds. I did quite a long period of time holding as a result of defence reviews and changes that happened during my time in training. So I remember turning up at the Lucas Air Show to do a 3-month hold, and it was going to be really exciting doing this air show and then starting elementary flying training. And then I was told I'd have a year to 3 years of holding, which is pretty much what's transpired. And that was before MFTS. But what we want for these young people coming into our system, they are amazingly talented. They're really fantastic. I've got a huge positivity about the next generation of all 3 services because I am a joint officer in charge of both Army Air Corps, Royal Navy and RAF flying. I am really, really positive about that next generation, and we owe it to them to give them a slick service through the training system.
So one of the solutions that we know about, because we heard about it in episode 90, was NJET. So we're sending aircrew to Texas to undertake flying training. And that's nothing new because during World War II, we offshored an awful lot of aircrew training to South Africa, to Canada, to the United States. So tell us about that side. Is that a strategy that's going to continue, or was that just filling a gap?
So I think it'll be a strategy that we will continue for a little while longer, several years. So offshoring, as you called it before, to our allies is actually a fantastic place. We've actually got creamy instructors in New Zealand. What an amazing experience. So when people come into the service, part of it is about the adventure of doing it. So that offshoring, I'm a big believer in The Obstacle Being the Way, a brilliant book by Ryan Holiday. But ultimately, these problem sets that we're dealing with gives us opportunity to engage with our allies, to learn from how our experts in other countries are doing their business, and to bring that back in and improve what we're doing. But my intent is absolutely to make sure our UK sovereign capability is there. So for those students and staff at Valley, I know from personal experience, they're delivering fantastic training, absolutely fantastic training. I wish I'd had that when I went through. And so we should be very proud of our own system, but we sometimes have to deal with these bottlenecks where we simply have a problem we need to solve. And so we will do that working with my friend Commodore Steve Jones in DNS, Tim James, who's the managing director of Ascent, and we'll work together to solve those problems, supported by the senior leadership team of the Air Force to manage that. And outsourcing is one of the ways we're doing it. And there's lots of different ways.
The world today is changing. The global threats are increasing. Are you looking at ways to scale up should we need to, if we were to go to war?
So I think this defence review is going to give us a new perspective on what we're trying to do. But I think what we're trying to do is make sure that the front line is exactly as the Chief talks about, always ready to fly and fight. And so my job is to make the most of our system. And if we do that properly, we should have the front line full of the right people in the right places to do the job. And even today, we're being really successful in filling the frontline need when they're asking for it. Will we have more challenges from that defence review? I don't know yet, but they might ask us to do more. But if we do, I'm sure we'll find a way to do that.
You've talked a little bit about business already and how commerce. Let's think about customers. As I see things, you have 3 customers. You've got your potential recruits who are considering coming into the Royal Air Force or the Royal Navy or the Army as aircrew. You have those that are going through the system currently, through the MFTS currently. And then you have commanders that need to deliver effect. So you've got 3 customers. What would you say to each of those 3 customers about what you and your team are doing to improve that?
Well, let's go from left to right. So from that person who's on the street thinking about whether they're going to join, I can honestly say from my own experience, not just going through my career in the Air Force, but going through that training system and the training system that I see today. I've been in my job for 2 months. I've been around all of the different bases. We've got some superb kit, infrastructure, and instructors who can make that journey really, really fantastic for you. If you join, I think you're going to have an amazing adventure. There will be challenges, there will be ups and downs, but you'll be surrounded by a group of people who are just fantastic. The camaraderie is like nothing else that you can do in industry. I always talk about it as when people say, "Oh, you've flown fighter jets, that's amazing." And you go, "Well, it's not. What I am doing is I'm a normal person doing an amazing job." And that is the military to me. We have normal people doing amazing things. And to be part of that is so exciting and so special. And more importantly, it's not just about you. You're doing something for service. You're doing something for the defense of freedom, if that's what you get up for. If you're doing it for your community, you're doing it for that. But it's an incredible experience. So if you want to join. It will be a fantastic adventure. Honestly, do it. Then for the people going through it, right now, it's a sales pitch, right? But it's true. I absolutely believe it. So for the people in the system, it's keep the faith. We've got some great people who are working every day and night to try and make your experience as good as possible. And that's not just the students. If I look at my very boring mission directive, I've got 5 words on it, and that's safety, throughput, quality, and then the last 2, a bit cheeky, is fun and fulfillment. I want people to come to work, whether they're an instructor or a student, and feel fulfilled, to enjoy their day, to really come home and go, that was amazing. And I certainly had that going through training, but we want people to be in stretch, so they're going to be challenged, and we're going to support them through that challenge. So you are going to get great training, great instruction, great psychology, great coaching and mentoring, and you will go to the front line a better person in almost every respect. To the front line, I'll go, just watch out. You've got these amazing young people who are coming through, and they will be really well trained. And the front line, I'm so proud of what the Air Force has done over the last 30 years. We deliver global effect worldwide. I was DACOS Ops when Op Pitting, so Director of Operations for 11 Group, as a group captain when Op Pitting was going on. To be so involved at seeing how the Air Force works from the heart of 11 Group is incredible, and to see how effective our front line is in every respect in such a small Air Force is fantastic to be part of. But this new generation of young people who are coming through, they will be really well trained, and they can deliver a huge amount of bang for your buck. So in other words, take advantage of that fantastic group of people, the next generation, because we do have big geopolitical challenges. And that's why the Chief's right. We need to always be ready to fly and fight, but I want them to be able to fly, fight, and win. And if we do that, maybe people won't try and have a fight with us.
And for those commanders, they're not going to be left shortchanged.
No.
You're going to deliver the people when they need them.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's a two-way street. I need those instructors to come and want to work with us, because I found when I left the Tornado, of course I wanted to just stay on the front line. It was fantastic flashing around in a Tornado at 600 knots and 100 feet at night, or doing terrain following radar missions, or doing precision guided munition missions over the Gulf. Honestly, as good as you can get. And so when I came in to become an instructor, I felt maybe that was a change that I didn't know how it was going to go. I found being an instructor one of the most rewarding things I have ever done. And I think it opens your mind. So for those people who are on the front line who might go, I just want to stay on the front line, honestly, come into the group and you will have such a rewarding part of your life, something you would never consider doing on your day-to-day journey. There will be things that come out of that are just fantastic. The relationships and the difference you can make. And
it's absolutely necessary to take the Air Force to the place where we want to go.
Without a doubt. So you cannot have a frontline Air Force of whether that's the Army Air Corps, the Royal Navy, or the Royal Air Force if you don't invest in your training system. And the Royal Australian Air Force have made a real big emphasis on we're going to make the training system work because that makes the frontline work. And I think we've always had that focus, but it is absolutely on point today because of the pressures that we face geopolitically.
Okay, brilliant, sir. Now, let's have a think about or talk about some of the more interesting, peculiar, innovative tactics you're using in training. I was very interested to read about the augmented reality with Red 6. What's that about?
Yeah, so you can imagine we're trying to make the fast jet pipeline work as well as is possible. So we're trying to do advanced technology insertion in there to help. So help with instructors, help with students, help with the number of aircraft. And one of the most innovative things we've seen is augmented reality. Now, Red 6 is one of a number of companies who could offer that kind of technology, but we're doing a trial with them. We announced it at the Royal International Air Tattoo, and we're going to put some of their technology into one of our Hawk or a couple of our Hawk T2s, and we're going to see what that technology does for us to see if we might later on want to roll it out across the fleet. Or maybe even in Texan. And what does it do? So augmented reality, if you're not a gamer, you're probably going, well, it sounds boring. To me, let's dumb it down a little bit. So there is, imagine you take off in your Hawk today, and I might do air combat against you. So you've got an instructor in your boot, I've got an instructor in my boot. We're both students, and we're fighting against each other. So that's 2 jets, lots of airspace we need to use, and that's 4 people involved. But when I'm fighting you, I can only really fight you in a Hawk because that's all you've got. So that's good. We can do some great training on that, and we do. But imagine if I take off on my own with my instructor in the back, and augmented reality on my helmet, I can project like a computer game, but not like a computer game you can do on your PS5. It is a genuine training emulator so that the jet I'm going to fight against is a Sukhoi 27 and I am genuinely fighting a Sukhoi 27 that's firing missiles at me whilst I'm flying my Hawk. So it's a computer game on top of a real simulated, emulated environment, because what the Hawk T2 is already a Typhoon emulator in the cockpit. So I've got this fantastic fusion of technology here where for a student, that is incredible. And a simple example would be, I don't have many air-to-air refueling Voyagers hanging around, but I can emulate that through the helmet. I can literally do air-to-air refueling on a Hawk next to a tanker. And for me, the pilot, the student, it feels like I'm tanking against a Voyager. Or even bizarrely, I know one of the trials they've done, even at like 5,000 feet, is you can land on a carrier. Now, we might not do that because the F-35 is a vertical one. You're not going to do that in a Hawk T2. But what it means is these technologies give you the way to reduce the number of instructors you need, reduce the amount of aircraft you need, reduce the amount of airspace or weather that you have to be affected by, and instead of lowering the quality of training, you're increasing the quality of the training and making it so real for the students and the staff that it becomes better and better and better.
That's worth signing up for.
Yeah, definitely.
That sounds amazing.
And if you wanted to go green about it too, I'm not spending thousands of pounds burning aviation fuel to achieve the same mission. I can use half the fuel and achieve a better mission. That's a real opportunity.
Is it still a concept, or is it being rolled out yet, or
so
where we're at?
In America, they've got a light aircraft where they demonstrate that capability. And I know my boss, AVM Cab Townsend, has already been out and seen that technology. We're going to do a trial to see how it works at a faster pace than that light aircraft on a Hawk T2, working with BA Systems to manage that and look if it works. Now, we might learn lots of things on that trial, but ultimately we'll see if it's worth investing in. But I think the key message is the Royal Air Force has been a real innovator over its 100+ years. And this is exactly the same stuff. The problems that we face give us great reasons to challenge what we do and to innovate. And I think this is a really exciting example of us continuing to innovate.
Amazing stuff. Let's wrap this up and talk about culture, because the flying training culture it shifts with every war, doesn't it? Through our predecessors back in 1918 and the flying training that they undertook through to World War II, where there was a big chop rate. That's not really understood so much, but there was a lot of people that were removed from flying training during World War II because they didn't make the grade. And now we're at this position where if they don't make the grade, that's our fault as instructors, and we've got to do a better job with the training. Can you tell us about today's culture and where that's going to go? What is this MFTS going to look like in the next 5 to 10 years?
That's a great question. So I think one of the key bits that I want to build on is the foundation we've done with Dr. Alsop and Commandant CFS, the amazing Group Captain Mikey Jordan, who really focused on human performance. The Americans do it in a classic American way. They call it the human as the weapon system. So that to me is it's classically American, but there's something in there. So we're going to invest in all those people and invest in our instructors to make sure that we're lowering both withdrawal rates and chop rates. And when we do see things in the system that aren't working, I'll give you an example in a second, we adjust that. So we had some quite high failure rates at Valley, and that was because the training that we were providing through Prefect and Texan wasn't preparing them as well as we could for sometimes that really dynamic change of going from flying to fighting. And that is quite a big change. And the team have done some great work where we now do more preparation for dogfighting, as it were, in the Texan. So now we do much more advanced tail chasing in the Texan with the concepts of lead and lag and rate and all these different things that we might use in air combat to prepare them for training on 25 and 4 Squadron. And what that's done is reduce that failure rate to a much more normal and acceptable level. But my job, as I said before, is to try and get as many people as possible through that training system to do their job on the front line. Now, what you would also make sure is I have a responsibility so that if you're not safe flying an aircraft, whether that's a helicopter or a fast jet or being an air traffic controller, if you're not safe doing that job, we want to find that out as soon as possible, get you as much training to get you to the point where you're good at it. But if you genuinely can't grasp it, then we need to find a way to get you to a place where you are really good. Now, I can give you an example. I'm an okay fast jet pilot, but I had the joy of flying in a couple of helicopters recently and their simulators. I am not a very good helicopter pilot. So if I went helicopters, I probably should have failed that training and be guided to a different part of the training system. So what we want to do is get people to where they're going to be successful and happy. But most of the time, because I know the training is so good, we will help almost everybody get through to a level of success. So our failure rates will be pretty low, I hope. And everybody we get through to the Frontline Extra is a great investment.
Okay. Air Commodore Rob Caine, you've shone the light on UK military flying training system. You've told us, you've owned up to what went on in the past. You've told us what's coming in the future. We really appreciate your openness and honesty.
Thank you very much. And I really enjoyed speaking to you.
Thanks for being on Inside Air.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm AS1 Emma Kerwin, and this is Reheat, where we take a look back at some of the RAF stories you might have missed. German aircraft are going to fly from RAF Lossiemouth under a new agreement between the UK and Germany. The deal will see a closer collaboration between the countries on developing new military equipment. That's because a weapons manufacturer from Germany is going to set up a factory here to make artillery gun barrels using British steel. The RAF's first wedge-tail airborne early warning and control aircraft has received its new paint scheme. It rolled out of the hangar at Southend Airport in the markings of 8 Squadron, who will operate the new aircraft in service. Air Vice Marshal Soraya Marshall, Assistant Chief of the Air Staff, has visited HMS Prince of Wales whilst it was taking part in exercise Strike Warrior off the coast of the UK. She witnessed an F-35B Lightning launch and had a tour of HMS Prince of Wales' key areas. Exercise Strike Warrior serves as a crucial test of the Carrier Strike Group's readiness and effectiveness in a variety of complex combat scenarios. And this year's Astra Awards have been held to celebrate innovation, challenges and improvements across the RAF. The event, held at the RAF Museum in London, recognises some of the most inspirational people, ideas and incredible impact they've had on the RAF's operational output. If you'd like to find out the list of winners, head to the RAF website. That was Reheat for InsideAIR.
Thank you, Emma. And now let's check out who's under the hat.
I'm AS1 Ben Russell, and this is Under the Hat, where we get to know an aviator in less than a minute. Name you're known by.
Warrant Officer Kenny Watson.
What's your profession?
I'm a log supplier for currently the Squadron Warrant Officer on 7644 Public Relations Squadron based at RAF Halton.
What's the best thing about your job?
The people. Reservists can be interesting.
Hardest part of your job?
Also the people. At times, they're not quite so interesting as they think.
Best location you've served?
Bosnia, up in the mountains doing rotors turn and refuels on every type of helicopter from across NATO.
What bit of luxury kit do you never deploy without?
My hottie mug, cold coffee is awful.
And what's your proudest moment in the RAF?
Escorting the Queen's Colour at a graduation at Halton in 2018.
Thank you, Warrant Officer Watson. And one final question before you go. I'm one of those interesting reservists you mentioned, aren't I? Sir? Okay, I think he's gone. But thanks anyway for being the latest aviator to appear on Under the Hat.
Cheers, Ben. It's been nice knowing you, mate. That's it for this episode of Inside Air. We'll be back again soon. In the meantime, please give us a like, follow us and subscribe via your favourite podcast provider.
You've been listening to Inside Air, a behind-the-wire view of the Royal Air Force, its people, technology and operations. If you're serving in the RAF and have a story for us, please speak to your unit media and communications officer. Inside Air is written and produced for the Royal Air Force by RAF Media Reserves.